the U.S. should remain being concerned about the dangers of externally organized terrorist attacks. Perhaps the most interesting and positive outcome in reflecting back on 20 years after 9/11 is that we've been fortunate to not have a single successful externally organized terrorist attack in the United States. We've had domestic terror attacks, we've had lone wolf terror attacks, but we have not had another 9/11. We have to be vigilant. We have to be concerned about that. Clearly, the changing situation in Afghanistan presents a challenge. Let's hope that we do not see Afghanistan become a place where new terror attacks on the U.S. or on our allies are organized.
So billions of dollars are spent in Afghanistan trying to, quote, transform that nation, make it more democratic, more open to women and minorities. Do you think moving forward, all of this will have worked? Was something accomplished now that the Taliban is back in power?
It's a difficult question to know what was accomplished and what was wasted. Massive amounts of money have been wasted, and the U.S. government has been documenting that through the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction, SIGAR. So this isn't something we don't know about. It is interesting how little Americans have paid attention to Afghanistan and how distant both Afghanistan and Iraq and some of the other sites of the post 9/11 wars have been for Americans who can't recognize these places on maps often. And this tells us something about what it means to be engaged in countries in this way. And I don't think that our leaders or our society effectively figured out how to talk about these far off places.
So what do you think it will take for people to care more, at least on this side of the world, the United States?
It's not easy to present a distant place like Afghanistan, one of the poorest countries in the world, to present that in a way that is readable, that makes sense for ordinary Americans sitting at home and dealing with their own lives and issues. I don't think there's some trick there. I do think the refugee situation may humanize some of all of this, but frankly, it's quite late. This is 2 decades of enormous investments, enormous risks and sacrifices on the part of Americans and Afghans. And what we have to think about is how to productively move forward. But this has been a devastating time for Afghanistan and a time of sort of reckoning for our own country.
And you spent some of your years in Afghanistan. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences? What were you doing?
I initially went to Afghanistan as an assistant to the UN Independent Expert for Human Rights in Afghanistan, and we were trying to uncover human rights violations occurring around the country and submitting reports to various authorities. And then I worked on rule of law and human rights projects for a number of years and spent a lot of time as part of that broad international effort to try to rebuild the country and try to create a kind of new Afghanistan in the wake of the Taliban regime and after the U.S. invasion in 2001.
So we've been hearing a lot about the wars and the violence and the conflict in Afghanistan. What would you like to say about the people and the land, since you spent some of your time there?
Well, it's an incredibly beautiful country. It's physically beautiful. Working with Afghans, I always found, was a real honor. It's difficult to explain. It's a complicated country, of course. It's a diverse population. There are enormous rural and urban divides, especially with the way cities have grown in the post 9/11 era. It's a beautiful place, but of course, it's a country that suffered so many tragedies that just can't help but worry about where things are going now. And I do think that the U.S. has a really significant responsibility for our Afghan friends and partners, both in terms of bringing folks here and just generally retaining a commitment to the country.
How do you think the United States will best engage moving forward with Afghanistan? If you could recommend a way or a policy for the United States to undertake with Afghanistan moving forward, what would it be?
Well, one of the questions is, now that the Taliban has won the war, at least by controlling Afghan territory or most of it, what will they do? They did a pretty terrible job of governing the country back when they ran the country, and they were unable to get international recognition for their state. Only 3 countries in the world were willing to recognize Afghanistan. But we don't know what it's going to be like moving forward. It's a country that is going to have a hard time. They're facing a terrible drought. Most of the government officials have been paid by international funding. That's true for teachers and healthcare workers and security force members. So what will the state do moving forward? The Taliban probably needs significant international support to continue a highly functioning state, but we don't know how it's going to play out. I very much hope that the U.S. retains its commitment to Afghan people, even as it has to complexly negotiate what it means to work with the Taliban.
Daniel Rothenberg, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.